rock music tend to be used in separate conversations, but I think what you've done and what Deep Purple did is brought them together in some way. So in a general sense, how do you think the sensibility of classical music became part of Deep Purple's music?
How can I put this? If it became part of Purple in any way whatsoever, it was because of a fan-based thing, you know. I mean, I was a fan of classical music. I mean, still am. It's meat and drink to me, you know, as much as anything else. And I think it was only a question of, you know, saying, what can we use here? How can I get this emotion across? You know, as I say, the further we progressed down the line, the less we used it. But going back to talking about sequences, you know, and like a sequence that Bach might have used, Highway Star and Burn are two good examples, I think, of Ritchie and myself using almost Baroque style sequences to support a keyboard or an organ solo, or a guitar solo. So I think maybe it was always in the back of the mind. But you know, like, if I'm ever going to be an evangelist, it's going to be on this one point, you know, that it's all music. I'm not a great fan of labels, and although you've got obvious labels like, of course, classical music, for want of a better label, is immensely different to rock music by its very nature. You know, I mean, it'd be a dull world if it wasn't different. But the larger umbrella that I would prefer to use is that it's all music, and you dip in where you want. It's Forrest Gump's box of chocolates, you know. I mean, you can go wherever you want. And to me, where I'm sitting in my life, pretty much every chocolate I've ever taken out of that box has tasted good. So I'm all right with all that.
I want to shift towards talking about jazz. You've been talking about improvisation, and I'm curious to know where the inspiration for you came from to create improvisational pieces with Deep Purple and create that sense of interplay. Who were the main influences on you in terms of improvisation?
Well, I think the first influence on you as an improviser has to be yourself. You have to have the courage to go off the page. To go off the page, to go away from the written page, and to just trust this sort of playful imagination, this other part of your brain that's able to make things up for you as you go along. That's a great moment in your life to discover that. But of course, and discovering as I did in my teens that I could sit at the piano and improvise, although then it was based in the way I was learning, which was a classical way. So when I after college, when I ended up in my first sort of blues band, I think it was more jazzy blues, and being asked to improvise. John, you take these two choruses here, bang, and you're off and running. So then you start to listen to great improvisers, and I had my heroes at the time. Dave Brubeck was a great hero. On the keyboards, Oscar Peterson, but then players like Parker and Miles Davis and so on, and listen to the way they looked at improvisation in two massively different ways. And you start to see, you know, if you keep your technique up, which is your servant, as I've said before, then you can ask your hands to go anywhere you particularly suddenly feel they ought to go. And one of the marvels of improvisation that I found is that sometimes you actually look down at your hand and say, you know, it's almost like another part of your brain goes, where did it go there? And you realise you've just done something good. So I don't think you can learn to improvise. You can help yourself be better at it by keeping your technique up. But I don't think if you're not a natural improviser, that maybe people would disagree with me, but I can't see how you can learn to improvise. You have to feel to improvise. You have to be you have to trust yourself. And some musicians just, especially of course classically trained or conservatoire trained musicians, find it almost impossible to conceive going off the page.
Shifting to rock music itself, when did you become aware of rock and roll? What was the spark for you?
Jerry Lee Lewis, I think. Elvis maybe, but to me Elvis wasn't rock and roll. Elvis was this kind of deep, dark, strange voice that I wasn't quite sure whether I liked. But then I heard Jerry Lee doing a whole lot of shaking going on, and my world flipped. That was an absolutely seminal day when I first heard it.
What was he doing that excited you?
It was raw, it was untrained. I could tell, because by this time I was a reasonably well-trained pianist, that what he was doing on the piano was nothing to do with what I've been taught to do. And by God, I wanted to sound like that. But I couldn't make the piano in the front room sound like Jerry Lee's piano on that recording, because I didn't know at the time there were, echo chambers and all that kind of thing. But there was a kind of an animal edge to it that I found tremendously exciting. And then also Little Richard for the same reasons.
I was talking with Ian about Little Richard as well, and just you would cover Lucille, I know. What about Little Richard was inspiring for you?
Well, on the one hand, it took the simplest of forms, and this astounding voice, this raw emotion in the voice, and the feeling, even before I knew that he was actually talking about something a little bit rude. I'm sure that Tutti Frutti means something else, but I didn't know what it meant. I'm still not absolutely sure, but Long-Tooled Sally. I pictured this woman. Remember, I was a teenager. I had dreams. No, I think there was a kind of a raw animal, untrammeled, untextured, untutored feel to it all. And that, to me, as a very textured, tutored young man who'd, been poring over Beethoven, Bach, and the like for years, this was massively exciting. And what happened to me, and I have to say this, which is why God granted me great luck here, is that when I heard that and expand my head around, I didn't lose the love of the stuff that I'd been working on for all these years. I just conflated the two, and it all became music to me. And that's really, I suppose, identified my life for me ever since. It's defined it.
And was that raw emotion something that you wanted to be part of the Purple sound as well?
Yeah, I mean, it was something that I'd been fighting to get into my playing from the first time I became a professional musician with the Artwoods. And started casting around to find ways to identify myself differently from everybody else that I heard, so that I could just say, like Gillan says in one of his lyrics, you danced and sang and stood on a mountaintop. Well, that's where you want to, and that's where you yell from when you're a young musician. You stand on the mountaintop and say, this is me.